This is the 3-3 to 3-5 review. Calculators are not allowed, and we will do number 1, which is to find the derivatives of each of the following. So we're going to be using our trig rules, our chain rule, and then the product rule, quotient rule, constant rule, power rule, etc., etc. So our job is to do all the rules in the appropriate order as we encounter them. So if we look at part A here, we can see that this is the same as the sine of x to the fourth, all raised to the second power. So if we take the derivative working from the outside in, we can see that the first rule that we will encounter is the one that involves this power of 2. So we're going to do the power rule first, which means we'll have 2 times the inside unchanged times the derivative of the inside. So if we now look at what is inside that derivative, the first rule that we will hit will be the sine. So that will be 2 times the sine of x to the fourth times the derivative of sine, which is cosine of its inside unchanged, times the derivative of the final inside. So if I finish this up, I'll have a 2 sine of x to the fourth times a cosine of x to the fourth times the derivative of x to the fourth, which is a 4x cubed. If we put this and the 2 together, you'll get the answer that I have on the review, which is 8x cubed sine of x to the fourth times cosine of x to the fourth. Notice that we applied 3 rules. The first rule was the power rule, the second rule was the sine rule, and the third rule was the interior power rule. And if we come back and look at our original function, we had the power rule was first, then the sine, then the x to the fourth. So I'm going to try and go through the remaining 2 problems a little bit more quickly than that. We don't have to write out every single step. So if we look at part B, we have the secant of x squared times the tangent of x squared. So looking at this, the first thing that I see is a multiplication of 2 functions. So that means I'm going to do my product rule. The product rule is the first one times the derivative of the second plus the second one times the derivative of the first. So if I want my first times the derivative of the second, that means I will be taking the derivative of the tangent. And taking the derivative of this will involve the chain rule, because first I will hit the tangent, then I will hit the x squared. So derivatives of tangents are secant squareds of the inside unchanged. Then I need to multiply by the derivative of the inside. Over here, I had the first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. So that means I need the derivative of this secant of x squared. Again, I'm going to have to do the chain rule, and I can see I've got a secant that I will hit first, and then an x squared that I will hit second. So the derivative rule for secant is secant tangent of the inside unchanged. So that means inside the secant and the tangent, I'm going to have that x squared. Then at the back, I will multiply by the derivative of the x squared, which is 2x. So now if we simplify that to make it look like what I have in my review, you can see that we have 2x times a secant cubed of an x squared plus a 2x times a secant x squared times a tangent squared of x squared. Okay, my final one is quite involved because I have multiple things going on here. I have a lot of nested functions. I've got a power rule, a sine rule, a power rule, a cosine rule, and an x cubed, which is the power rule again. So we've got to do them in order. The first thing we're going to do is this exterior power. So that's first. So that means my derivative, I screwed up a little bit. My derivative, I will bring that 5 out in front and leave the inside unchanged. And that will be raised to the 4th power. So I've now taken care of this power of 5. The next thing I hit is the sine. Well, the derivative of sine is cosine, and notice that inside that sine I have all of this, so that's going to stay the same. So now I've taken care of the power, I've taken care of the sine. The next thing I hit is this power of 4. So again, I'm going to do the power rule, and I'll look to see what is raised to the 4th power, because that will remain unchanged, and it's the cosine of x cubed. So that will be raised to the 3rd, because we brought the power down, inside unchanged, raised to that power subtracted from 1. Then I've taken care of the power. The next thing I hit is the cosine. So the derivative of a cosine is a negative sine of its inside unchanged. The final thing that I hit is this last interior function. So the derivative of that is a 3x squared. Again, you can simplify. It's kind of messy. We can pull all of our coefficients and our x's together. So we'll have a negative 60x squared times a sine to the 4th of a cosine to the 4th of x cubed times a cosine of a cosine to the 4th of an x cubed times a cosine cubed of an x cubed times a sine of an x cubed. And that's it.